Well, today it's all about what I do daily. I guess the backyard edition. I did one on the front yard not too long ago to kind of give you an idea of just small things that I do every day. And my question for you guys is, what kind of small things do you do on a daily basis that may be a little bit different from a lot of the things I'm going to talk about, but something that's kind of unique to your garden, but again, kind of a little ritual or habit that you follow every single day, because I think that's really interesting, and it might also be something that helps all of us prevent some problems later. So if you would just put that comment below, what kind of things do you do every day, and make sure to put your growing zone. So obviously one of the things I'm doing every day now is I'm having to water because heat has arrived. It's definitely summer. The rains have stopped, and I'm just every morning have to go out and see what needs watering and what doesn't. So my first kind of tip for this, you guys, is I don't care who you are, whether you suffer from arthritis or not. If you get one of these hose-end sprayers that has just one of these push-up valves, then you don't have to compress a trigger or anything like that, which might be an issue if you have hand mobility problems, or if, like me, just over time you just become fatigued at holding down that trigger. So these are wonderful, and they're really easy on and off. And thanks to you guys, one of the best tips you ever gave me, and many of you gave it to me, so to all of you who responded to my dilemma about leaky washers, leaky hose connections, you saved my day. I got some of the plumber's tape, I put it on all of my hoses, and it worked brilliantly, and for that I thank you. I think that may be one of the two best tips that I've gotten, this one, and also about using this tool fabric to keep squirrels out. So here, definitely one thing I water every day are my hanging baskets. And on Saturday, I hope you guys, as we walk around, you can really see a difference, because I worked my little fanny off on Saturday, and man, did I get things cleaned up, pruned up, tidied up, and I hope you guys can tell a difference. I also cut this back pretty dramatically. It may still look like it's really full, but oh my gosh, all of the scented geraniums and everything in here had just really gone wild. So I cut it back pretty hard, and yes, I did save all of those cuttings to make a really fragrant bouquet of them inside. It's actually in my laundry room. So I was just telling Stuart that when I water hanging baskets, I do it a lot, and I do it every day. Because in the wind and in the sun, they really dry out real rapidly. And I think Stuart was asking me, sometimes Stuart, if I'm gone, he will do watering for me. And he confessed that there's a lot about watering he didn't know, because it really is kind of an art form, isn't it, Stuart? I mean, and there, in addition to having some science to it. So I think we're going to do a video on just watering practices, at least how I do it. I'm sure some of the things I do are not really efficient, but nevertheless, we're going to go through some tips and tricks and helpful hints on watering in general, because definitely it's watering season now. So that would be my first thing that I would do on my what I do daily, and that is definitely watering. I do all my watering in the cool of the morning. Sometimes if it gets really hot, some containers might even, and if they're too small, some containers might even need to be watered twice a day. I'm sure you guys have had that same experience. But right now, once a day is just fine. The smaller ones really tend to dry out more quickly, and especially my topiaries, I have to make sure that they don't dry out. Now, I've got in my walkabout, and another future video I'm going to do, because you guys have requested it, is kind of my work area. My work area needs some work, and it needs to kind of be tidied up in some things, but I'll talk about that for how you can have a workplace area when you don't have a lot of room or you don't have a dedicated garden shed or something like that. So we'll try to do a video on that as well. But right now, let me just give you a few updates in this walkabout. The sun is coming out, so the light will on and off be harsh, but that's just the way it is. I'm kind of proud of myself because I tend to be more of a maximalist in the garden, and I'm trying to kind of not be such a maximalist because I think plants like it when you practice a little bit of restraint. And I did that when I planted this window box. I did a video on it last week. You guys can go back and you can watch me do it. So I just planted some things I stole from Peter to pay Paul. It's coming along nicely. But mostly what I'm excited about, and I'll get out of the way so Stuart can show you, I planted some of those begonia tubers from Brex, and you can see that they're starting to come up. Can you see those over in the distance, Stuart? And by the way, for those of you that are new, it was one of my most frequently answered questions. Stuart is my buddy, my pal, my BFF, my business partner, and my photographer, but he is not my husband. Though sometimes, much to his dismay, I treat him like one of my sons. These are absolutely fabulous, you guys. I want you to see. These have grown even more since I showed them to you. Look at the size of these Terra hydrangeas. They're unbelievable. And this is just a 2-year-old plant. So you can see the difference between the size of this one and that one that I just planted recently. And next year I think I'll put some kind of support on them because the heads are just so heavy and they dry beautifully. My neighbor across the street, I planted one at her house several years ago, and her blooms are even larger than mine. It's absolutely, just absolutely incredible. They don't even look real, but they are spectacular. I've got another plan for this area to hide some of these cable lines, and I'll show that to you after I get it completed, but I'm definitely making progress in this area, and I'm pretty happy about that. Here is an update that is so fun, you guys. So a while ago, I told you that I planted these and they were really pitiful. This is why I always carry snips. They were really pitiful when I first planted them. And all of this foliage that looks kind of exotic and tropical, all of this is from my amaryllis bulbs that I saved. And this year I'm actually going to try to continue to feed them over the growing season and then dry them out so that I can try to force them again. But look at this, you guys. Now this kind of stuff is the reason I garden. There's a bud right there. I have no idea what color it is, but I'll get my scissors out of the way so Stuart can show you that bud. And it's a big fat one. So what I've been doing on these, and the foliage will just keep getting bigger and more lush, and it really grounds this corner. And a lot of times I've not been good about tending my amaryllis bulbs, but I'm going to be better about it this year. I did this once before, and I had forgotten just what a brilliant foliage plant they make when you plant them outside in the summertime. So that's another way to kind of reuse, recycle, repurpose your own amaryllis bulbs. They look really, really beautiful there, and they'll continue to look this way into the summer. And what I've been doing is they tell you if you want to reuse your amaryllis bulbs that you need to feed them so that they'll have enough food storage to put out another bloom later in the season when you force them. And so I've been feeding them with Bloom Buster, a Bloom Buster fertilizer, just a Hosan Bloom Buster fertilizer. And I'm gonna see if that makes a difference. So that's my little experiment right now. And when I water those, then I also am watering my Encore azaleas with that same Bloom Buster, because these will bloom in the fall. So it's kind of good for all of them. And then this whole area, I need to get out my pillows, but all of, yes, it's trash day if you can hear that. The Nandinas and everything really, they really came back. Over here, I've got a pancake arborvitae that's getting hydrated in the bird bath before I plant it in this pot right here. And then I'll clean out the bird bath and put all new fresh water in there. And that reminds me about the other wonderful tip you guys gave me a pretty long time ago. Another best tip, I'll put a link below to the product. Whoever it was that told me about using those mosquito bits for not only mosquitoes, but for fungus gnats, works brilliantly. So I'm gonna get out some more of those mosquito bits. Stuart will be happy to hear that. So I've got my hose out. I'll try not to trip over it. One thing about geraniums and scented geraniums in particular is, as beautiful as they are, they do lots of this kind of thing, where they get dead and dying foliage in there, just for whatever reasons, it doesn't get enough light or whatever. So they do require a little bit more cleanup and garden hygiene than some other plants to keep them looking nice, but it's not an onerous task because, oh my gosh, it smells just beautiful. So what I'll do is in situations like this, I just drop whatever it is, the debris right there, and then I come back in later and I'll pick it up all at once in my basket to then put it in the compost pile. Same with these, but what I love about this, you guys, is when you take off all of that dead foliage and such, let me see if I can't get that. That's going to need pruners, not just scissors. It really exposes the beautiful branching of the scented geraniums. So it just has this kind of Japanese quality where it kind of arches and has movement, and I love that. And so pretty much on a daily basis, I give all of my geraniums a little tidy every day or so, maybe not every day, but every day or so, I'll give them a little tidy. And I will also clip off anything that needs to be deadheaded. This is always a dilemma. You guys tell me if it's a dilemma for you. So like, what do you do when most of it is gone, but then there's just a few hangers on? Sometimes I'll do that, but sometimes I'll just go ahead and take the entire flower stem off. One thing that you really want to be watching for right now, I have not seen signs of it yet, but that is budworm. And budworm is when they start eating the buds. Geraniums are particularly prone to budworms. Caterpillars start eating the buds, and then the flowers are distorted or consumed entirely. And what I use for that is bacterial thuringiensis, a dust, dipel dust or dipel dust, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I'm not using it prematurely because it can also get good caterpillars that turn into monarch butterflies and things. So if I see a budworm, I will point that out to you. I'll show you what it looks like. A lot of times you can identify them because there will be little black speckles, which is actually their feces, and you'll see little black speckles on the leaves from where they have pooped on your geraniums. How dare they? So that's a way to identify whether or not you have budworms. And typically, if I start seeing a problem, here's what I do. And again, I'll put a link below to what this product is. It is approved for organic gardening, but you don't want to use it indiscriminately. So I still be careful. And what I do is, Stuart, let me see if I can. So here I've got a geranium bud that hasn't flowered yet. And if I start seeing a problem with budworms, what I do is I will just take a small canister of the dust and I will just dust the flower bud itself alone. And I will try not to just get the entire plant. I'll just try to do target dusting for budworms on both the pelargoniums and the scented geraniums, and really any kind of geraniums that you have, or for that matter, budworms can be bad on petunias. things like that. So any place you have bud worms, that is something to be mindful of. I should have gotten the package out of what it is that I use, but I'll put a product link below and it's in the description. So if you're not sure how to access the description with all the links I talk about, just ask Siri or Google, where is the description on YouTube? Yeah, and it's typically just below. There's a little button that you press on the right-hand side below the video, but it describes what I'm doing, and it also has all the appropriate links. Now, I told you, Stuart laughs every time I talk about this because I've said it a number of times. And by all means, if you love this shape, you go for it. I'm coming around to it, but for some reason, this spiral shape hasn't been as appealing to me as other just globular shapes, spherical shapes. But nevertheless, I decided this weekend, since I was doing pruning, to go ahead and prune this spiral variegated boxwood. You can see this one over here has not been pruned. I'll tackle it next. I wasn't sure if I was going to let them grow into cones or keep the spiral form, and I decided to keep the spiral form, and I actually am really liking it. So that's good. You can see here that I watered this geranium and that a lot of the water is falling into the second tier of this plant stand. Now, I want to be careful about that because that could be a mosquito breeding ground. But Stuart, if you'll stay right there, I'm going to show you guys a trick. Because when it starts getting really hot and humid, what I'll sometimes do is take a pristine pot that I want to get moldy, that I want it to start growing moss on it, get mossy. I'll put it in this standing water, knowing that air circulation is not going to be great. Sometimes I'll even cover it with like a piece of plastic or something. And what that does is it just really provides the perfect atmosphere for this to start growing moss and start to get that kind of patina that we like so much. So I can kind of cover that up. It will get hot in there, it will get steamy in there, and in short order it will start getting mossy and dirty and get that aged look that we all like so much. So that's a little tip. It also, by the way, will then absorb that water so the mosquitoes can't nest in it and get worse. Let's come over here. You may remember that I had a whole bunch of larkspur in here. And as soon as it got hot, the larkspur started fading. So I pulled most of it out. And it's one of my favorite things to do as the season changes, is once it goes to seed, I pull it all out because then it exposes these boxwood balls, which then I just clip to perfection. And I just love the look. And then I tidied up all of the brick and everything in the foreground. A lot of you ask if I have any kind of plastic underneath this as kind of a sub-layer, and I do not. It is basically just dirt. I laid these with a spacer to make sure that spacing in between each one was consistent across it, and then some of them I just put in a haphazard pattern, and then I put gravel in it. But I don't have too much of a weed problem, and it's not a large area if I do have a weed problem. But what I always do is I make sure that I leave some of the larkspur here so it will go to seed and do its magic thing again next year. You guys gave me some great ideas for how to modify this sentimental area, but I'm not going to do it now because I actually love the way all of these hydrangeas cascade over. Once they dry and I want to cut them to bring inside in dry form, then I'll probably do something and really clean up this area. But right now I think it looks just a little too romantic. Let me show you guys. Look at this snowflake oak leaf hydrangea. That is over a foot long. It's incredible. So this is one of them, man, as soon as it dries, I will definitely cut a huge bouquet of this. And I think I told some of you that I one time did a chandelier out of these, and I don't know if I have posted a picture in the community tab, but I will do that so you can see what it looks like when they are just really flowing and cascading everywhere in this kind of pendulous form. So I will do that. So right now it's all about the hydrangeas. You can see over here that there's some of the macrophylla, the French hydrangeas that are just now starting to put on buds and come into bloom. So it's nice to have them come in phases. In addition to really grooming that hanging basket, I planted another hanging basket here. And I like that rhythm and repetition of that coral color, both from the geraniums and from these begonias. And I love that as it travels through the space. So when I look, there's the one in the foreground, there's this one, there's hints of that color below. And then, Stuart, if you'll pan around to the huge saucer, that's the top of a bird bath, that is the ultimate punctuation point. So back to what I do daily, I continue to deadhead. And one thing I'm doing when I'm watering you guys right now is, after all of that rain we had, and if you've had a lot of rain, you really are going to have to feed things a lot, at least your annuals, things that they're really coming into their own. This is their best, most dramatic season, and it really takes a lot of food to keep them blooming their heads off. And especially if it's rained a lot, because all of that water, whether it's actually supplemental watering that you're doing with your hose, or if it's rainfall, it really leaches all of those nutrients out of your pots and out of your flower beds. And so you need to keep replenishing that food. So right now, I'm doing a lot of feeding. And for my pots, I'll just use some kind of water-soluble hose end. I don't really care about it being organic. If I am watering things in the ground, then I usually use some kind of organic Espoma product. So there's that. Once it starts getting really hot, and by really hot, I mean, 96 and above, I begin to back off on fertilizing, because the plants are doing all they can to just survive. Much less put on a show for all of us. So that's kind of my tip. And I will try to do one in the future. A lot of you have asked about fertilizing, and I'll try to do one kind of garden tour that's just all about fertilizing. So all of these other oak leaf hydrangeas are doing beautifully. One thing I am really doing on a daily basis right now is trimming all of my Eugenia topiaries, because they finally are putting on enough green growth and rapid growth that I want to get them to adopt their ultimate form. And I'm so glad that they are finally starting to look like they looked like last year at their best. Here is another thing that I tend to do fairly regularly. I love tiny plants, and by tiny plants I mean sedums and thyme and anything that's got tiny foliage and a tiny leaf. Now these suckers down here, I don't want them there, so I don't want to start another level. So I'm going to remove those with my snips. I want this to fatten up a little bit. So I'll come back with my trash basket and I'll pick all of this up later. But to encourage bushiness, so that there is a thick expanse of this sedum, it's a stone crop, then I will frequently snip like this. Now obviously if it's in the ground you might not want to do this. This is maybe a little too fastidious for you guys, but nevertheless I really want it to thicken up. Wherever this stuff drops, it may root and start another plant, so I leave all of those clippings there. And then I just love this is one of the tiny little things. It's dollhouse gardening. I'm not sure what this is. I will do a plant ID on it. I see it every year, and in the ground it does not do well, but I have found in pots where it gets really good drainage. It does well. I just love the delicacy of it. And ultimately, in no time at all, the entire base of this Eugenia will be filled with this sedum and this tiny little fern, and I love that. I'm always looking out for my next obsession, I guess. So obviously topiary was the first obsession, and then my next obsession was scented geraniums. I really got into scented geraniums, and olive trees was another obsession. And I never seem to drop off an obsession. I just keep adding new ones. My new one is this curly jade, Crassula. And I'll put the full botanical name in the description below. But if you are on Instagram, there is an account, Harold's Finishing Touches, that is one of my favorite accounts. It's in Australia, and they use masses of this in pots to just brilliant effect. So I found some at Lowe's, and I potted it up in here with excellent drainage, a cactus mix, and lots of sand. I have some more succulents. I love its foliage. I will have to bring this in over the winter, but this is one of my new obsessions if you guys want to join my bandwagon. I'm really getting into this. So as I get more pots of it, I'll think of more ways to display it, but this is my next thing that I can tell is really tugging at my heartstrings. So that's what I am doing here. You can see that all of this Deutzia, that when I was creating negative space, it's starting to flush out and put on new growth. I cut back. This is a sugar shack bush. This is a Proven Winners sugar shack, and I pruned it up so that the bottom limbs weren't projecting out into the turf. And by the way, you guys, if you ever had a question about my turf, then definitely go and watch today's video. I mean, Stuart will put a link, but it answers with the owner of the company that installed it. It's a long video. We covered absolutely every consideration I had about installing, and reservation I had about installing artificial turf, where we think it's appropriate, where we don't, cost, the variety that I used, things that you might want to take into account. But ultimately, it has just been a fabulous solution for me. It's not for everyone, but it is for me. So over here, I'm gonna kind of just clip off some stuff. Got too much water in all the rain, and you can kind of see that's a sign of overwatering. This just got too much water where there's not really good drainage in here. I'm starting to deadhead the lavender veronica, but look at this white wedding hydrangea. All of these this hydrangea paniculata, these bloom a little bit later. So this will all come out. It's all through this area, and all of these will come into bloom after all of those are starting to dry. So it is this progression and transition of bloom that I just love. This is one of my favorite Southern Living plants. So I will put links to that below, but those are pretty easy to find. Some plants right now from Southern Living and other companies in general, they're hard to find. But I think these are still pretty readily available. And definitely, if you can't find a plant that you really love, then put it on your wish list for next year and order it as soon as it is available. One thing I'm going to be doing next, I'm just kind of observing now, but some of my golden barberry needs to be cut back a little bit. It's being a little bit thuggish on some surrounding plants, so I will do that. But right now, I just like the bounty of it. I like the way it looks. And I've got some Virginia creeper in the back to clean up. My Brex dahlias are doing gangbusters. And by the way, you guys, I'm so thrilled. These plant supports are now available on QVC. So if you want them, I have a feeling they're going to sell out pretty fast. You might want to get yours. I'm getting ready to order actually 5 more for the potager. I think I'm going to do the galvanized metal that looks like this, because I want all of them to fill up the different quadrants of the potager. So I'm getting ready to order more of these. Look at how large, I keep talking about it because it's so unusual, but I can't believe this viburnum has put out so many blooms this time of year, and more are coming. That's very uncharacteristic for this time of year. Your myrtle topiaries, you guys, I think there's sometimes an impression that they kind of like shade, maybe because I've got some of mine in shade by my back porch. They really want full sun, and I'm rethinking my topiary theater up there to put it out into more sun, because this is when they're putting on new growth. This one was kind of awkward, and yesterday I pruned it into a triple ball form, kind of a poodle form. So I'm assessing all of those, and one day I hope to have just an absolutely blissful day of doing nothing but playing with my topiaries. If you guys want to come along, you are invited. I potted up more dahlias from Brex. These I got in these pots a little bit later, but you can see that they're just now starting. They'll be ready for pinching pretty soon. And I put them in this area here in front of that cloud pruning I did. You see there are still stubs down at the bottom, and I need to get out my heavy duty pruners to really finish cleaning that up and remove those stubs. This area gets pretty intense sun in the late afternoon, so I kind of keep that in mind as when I place things here. Not too long ago, I did a video on bulletproof plants for the South, or bulletproof perennials in general. One of them was echinacea, or echinacea purpurea, or coneflower, and you said, why didn't I show it in bloom? Because it wasn't its time to bloom, but it is now. And by all means, if you love it as much as I do, this is the quintessential Oklahoma plant of the prairie, then you can find it now. I just was at a nursery the other day, and now's the time you can find it real easily in bloom, and it's really a tough as nails plant. And then I'm always doing, so here I noticed that my pot that had this dianthus in it, it was really getting eaten up by sow bugs. This may or may not make it, but I'm keeping an eye on it. I will probably shear it to help it recover, and hopefully with a little bit less water, some Captain Jack's dust, and a little bit of TLC, maybe I can get it to resurrect and stand up and fly right again. So I'll keep my eye on this, and if not, off to the compost it goes, and something else will get planted in here, probably a sedum. In my QVC baskets, it is all about purple, and all of this scaevola and petunias, these are finally, we're getting enough sun that I should have an explosion of purple here pretty soon. I just have to make sure that the other things that are in here don't thug out the scaevola and the salvia ferencia and the purple petunias that are in here. So on my daily to-do, I'll kind of keep an eye on that. And then it's just general deadheading. Same thing over here with this golden barberry. My goodness, it's really starting to take over. So I will definitely do some grooming on that. Lots of deadheading, and I need to pot up this rosemary, which I will do. My cardoon is finally starting to put on growth. It really wants the heat, you guys, and heat and sun, so it should start blooming pretty quickly. And then I've got lots of other stuff to do back in the potager. Stuart, if you would just do a span of the potager, I'll cover this at another time. But look at how pretty the dried allium heads look. I think they look pretty even when they're no longer purple. But pretty soon they're going to start getting dry and falling over, so I'll cut a huge bouquet of them, and I'll show you what I do with them once I cut them. So that's kind of the circumference of what I do daily. You can see here that these mums, these white mums, I'm letting them go ahead and bloom, and then as soon as they bloom, I'll give them a Chelsea chop, cut them back so they'll rebloom again in the fall. Pollinators love this lavender veronica, and there's quite a bit here, but there is even more of it in front of all of these pots. And so I cut back and pulled out a lot of it when I did the larkspur so that I could then trim that boxwood ball. And I will end there. Right now I think the entire yard has a lot more definition. It looks less full and rangy, I think, and I like that more tailored look. As much as I love the bounty of all of the larkspur and everything, it makes me feel more calm once that stuff is finished and my cherished globes and things like that are exposed. So there you go. You guys put some comments below on what you kind of do on your daily rounds, and I will see you next time. Well, here is my fashion epilogue today. My sunglasses are Armani Exchange. I got these at Nordstrom Rack. I really like them because they're comfortable. And have you ever noticed how some sunglasses are comfortable and some are not? Anyhow, these are new. I like sunglasses almost as much as boots, and yes, I wear all of them. My earrings, I can't remember where they came from. I've had these for forever, and they are one of my favorite pair to wear in the summer, because I think one of the kind of signature fashion statements that I like in summer is I'll have great big earrings on and not a lot of other jewelry, because it just kind of gets too hot to have a lot of other kind of stuff on. So I love bracelets and that kind of thing in the winter, but in the summer, unless I'm going out, I typically don't wear a lot of other jewelry, but I love my statement earrings, and I also love them because they always remind me of my mother-in-law, who always had huge statement earrings on. I love the look, whether it's on trend or it's not on trend, I love the look. This shirt, this is one of my favorite tunic shirts, partly because my son Johnny gave it to me. It is Indian cotton, and when I say Indian, it literally came from India. My son lived in Jaipur, New Delhi, Lucknow. He lived in a number of different places in India for quite a long time, and he would bring these back for me. And some of them are sleeveless and some of them are 3/4 length sleeves. They are wonderful to sleep in, ladies. If you get hot at night, they are 100% cotton. I don't care if they're wrinkled or not, but they're so cool, and I just love them. And there are some available on Amazon. I'll try to put some similar links below, but whenever he was there, he would pick some of these up for me because I like them so much, and especially this time of year because they're cool and flowy. I'm not sure what these are called. My flowy pants, these came from Goodwill. I don't know the brand, but they are so cool, and I love the look. I just think they're I don't know, they're kind of feminine and flowy, and I love the look. And these were something that I wasn't sure if I would like or not, so it was a perfect thing to get at a thrift store for probably all of $4 or $5. And I've already worn them a lot this year, and they're even a little bit tattered on the end, but I don't like that. I don't mind that. I just kind of like it because they're cool, and they're perfect for just working out in the garden or after you've worked out in the garden. And my shoes, and yes, I'm about to get a pedicure, but my sandals came from Target. They are Any Day, and they are so comfortable, and I will not buy sandals anymore that you just can't slip in and out of, and I don't like sandals that go between my toes. So these were $19 at Target. I just got them this week. So there you go. There is my fashion ensemble for the day. One last thing. A lot of you ask about my chain link on my Apple Watch, and I got this off of Amazon, and I will put a link below in the description box. And by the way, we're going to do a tutorial I know it's not real obvious when you watch a YouTube video where how to read the description with the links in it. So we'll do a little tutorial on that for those of you if you're like me and you're not real tech savvy. So we will do that. Stuart, would you remind me? Okay, there's your little fashion epilogue for today. Have a great week.